Hi guys, I'm Bhaginaran Singh and I'm here to talk about a drug that is known as Pitosperma that's lately been too much circulated and been jumbling on WhatsApp and different social medias as an oxygen scavenger, or that is used to increase the oxygen saturation level of a person or a patient. That has been like many of the things later. CCRH has to give a clarification on this thing, and Public Interest Bureau also gave an guideline that this should not be used as a substitute of oxygen saturation or as an oxygen support. It can't be used. So I've been going through all this, and like people have been using it and saying that it is a digitalis of a lung. Like digitalis is used to save the patient at the when there's chances of heart failure and everything. So these are the things people have been talking about. They have been talking about that it is used in cardiac asthma, and it increases oxygen saturation by it removes temporary obstruction to the oxidation of the blood by stimulating respiratory centers, increases oxidation and excretion of carbolic acid. My point is, what all I had gone through this drug, and it has been found like in few cases it is actually working, in few cases it's not working. But if we go through the pathology of COVID-19 and if we go through the pathology of aspidosperma, we found that there's actually a correlation. Like there's one line in aspidosperma that it is used in thrombosis of pulmonary artery. This is what all I really need to really want to talk about. Like thrombosis of pulmonary artery is the main thing that we need to focus on. If we go through pathology, and we all know that on fifth day, usually, if we go through allopathic mode of treatment, they are using heparin or low, or we can say low molecular weight heparin or unfractional heparin. They've been using to since they are using from fifth day onwards. Then we are watching out investigation. We find out what ground glass opacities, and then there's crazy pavement, and their consolidation even. So when we go through ground glass opacity, what actually ground glass opacity indicate, and that too, like a layman person is coming to us and telling us that there's white shadow on the corners of the lung in an x-ray and I'm having COVID. So that thing that they are telling is actually ground glass opacity. And what ground glass opacity is actually, it is pneumonia plus microthrombi, and microthrombi throughout the lung cavity, especially in the periphery. So if we go through the pathology, and we all know about a disease that is known as pulmonary embolism. Usually we used to study about pulmonary embolism in patients who been like old age patients who had surgery and who been immobile for more than 72 hours, or people traveling in long flights like from India to US, and all of a sudden these old age people have they die, and the cause of their death is known as pulmonary embolism, or post operative people who been in an ICU and suddenly they die. So when we know about this pathology, this is usually found in people of pulmonary embolism, right? And when we go through pulmonary embolism pathology, what basically is happening, it is due to the secondary cause, that is DVT, deep vein thrombosis. Thrombus from the deep vein of the legs travel to lung, or it can travel to heart. But when it travel to lung, it travel to heart, it goes through right atria, ventricle, then it goes through pulmonary artery. When it enters pulmonary artery, in pulmonary artery, if there is a big thrombus, it blocks the pulmonary artery, descending branch usually, and usually in the right lung. So this is the pathology of pulmonary embolism. So at that moment, what we find about that, there's few of the things that happen with the patient, right? And there's also a sub thing, to cut it short, there's also a one more you can say disease that comes under pulmonary embolism. It is differentiated into massive and submassive. When we talk about the submassive pulmonary embolism, instead of one big clot in the pulmonary descending artery, there are further small thrombi all over the sub branches of pulmonary artery. And the pathology, if we go through the pathology, what is the present complaint of the patient? What happens is, patient is Like if we go through oxygen, partial pressure of oxygen, right? Partial pressure of oxygen, that is air that we are providing to the patient. It consists of saturation. Saturation is normal, like oxygen saturation is totally normal in alveoli, but the capillaries that needs to carry this oxygen, where the exchange of blood actually happens, those capillaries don't have enough of blood supply. So what happens is we are giving a patient an oxygen support, right? And even oxygen is reaching to the patient and it is saturated oxygen. But what is happening, because there is no blood supply in the capillaries around alveoli, there's no exchange of oxygen. I mean, there's no oxidation of hemoglobin. Now in this case what happen is now in this case what happen is patient is unable to breathe. I mean, continuously what we are seeing, that even on oxygen support, oxygen saturation of the patient is falling down, because near capillaries don't have blood to exchange oxygen from alveoli. Now this is the main cause. I mean, if we correlate this pathology of pulmonary embolism, and if we go through venous thromboembolism or pulmonary microthrombosis in COVID, the thing is same. I mean, alveoli is getting oxygen from outside, but problem is that surrounding capillaries are obstructed with the thrombus. They are not getting sufficient blood, and the blood, there's no exchange of oxygen. This is one factor. But in COVID, there's one more thing. There's even pneumonia, right? And when we know that there's consolidation, and we know that what basically happens is alveoli get filled up with a fluid instead of air. What we found out in what we find in ground glass opacity, it is basically alveoli are partially filled with a fluid and partially with the air, while in consolidation they are completely filled with the air, completely filled with fluid. So basic differentiation is consolidation and ground glass opacity that we found on CT or X-ray, is that bronchoalveolar bronchiovascular structure are intact. You can find out the margins of bronchiovascular structures in ground glass opacities, while when fluid increases furthermore and it totally obstructs the alveoli, at that moment what we only found, what we can't see is, even we can't make out the markings of bronchiovascular structures. That's the basic difference. I mean, that is a staging of COVID-19. Initially what patient will present to you as a ground glass opacity, and later it will either both will be present, consolidation and ground glass opacity, or there can be evolution into a consolidation, then further crazy pavement and everything. My point is, pneumonia used to happen, like many time influenza used to happen, pneumonia used to happen, but we never used to have so much of complication. I mean, mortality rate of severe and critical cases of 40%. That's really a scaring thing. 40% is because it's not only simple pneumonia, it's pneumonia with microthrombus, and that we microthrombus are the thing that we find in the periphery, that white patches are actually the microthrombi. And this is the only reason that allopathic mode of treatment is heparin and unfractional heparin they've been using for that. But if we go through aspidosperma, aspidosperma is a drug that has a potential to dissolve thrombus in the pulmonary artery, that is in the capillaries of lung we are talking about. So when we have a drug, like what will be the presentation of, if we talk about the presentation of the person, what will be the presentation of the person? Oxygen saturation gradient will be like if we go through oxygen saturation gradient of a person, right? If we go through oxygen saturation gradient of a person, we find out that partial pressure of oxygen in alveoli is consistent, while partial pressure of oxygen in the small blood vessels surrounding alveoli decreases. Therefore, this gradient increases. Now, there's no blood supply in the pulmonary artery. What happens is that there's increase in the dead space, there's pulmonary vessel constrictions. This is due to the hypoxia. Whenever there is hypoxia felt in a portion of an alveoli and there's no blood supply, then what happens is there's pulmonary vessels of that area get constricted. This is a physiological phenomena, and the blood of that area gets shifted to the other part that is getting enough of oxygen and enough of blood supply. This is a physiological phenomena. So here what is happening, there's increase of a dead space, there's pulmonary vessel constriction around the vessels where there is thrombus, microthrombi is present, and there is alveolar hypertension. And alveolar hypertension is also hyperventilation. There's alveolar hyperventilation, and this hyperventilation is due to hypoxia only. I mean, brain centers get activated that they are not getting enough of oxygen exchange, so they will hyperventilate. I mean, brain will think that oxygen is not coming from the environment, although oxygen is coming from environment. But what is happening is there's no exchange that is occurring, so there will be an alveolar hyperventilation. If there's massive pulmonary clot or thrombus present in pulmonary artery, then what is we find out there's pulmonary oligmia. Like all of the sudden you will find out that patient was well, and suddenly patient have hyperventilation, patient is unable to breathe, and he is having breathlessness. That is sudden. If that suddenness happens, this is the case of massive pulmonary embolism. Although this is not very common in COVID cases. Basically what is, if we try to correlate between pulmonary embolism and pulmonary microthrombi, we find out that this is a kind of a submassive pulmonary embolism. So in this thing, when we will find out that there will be, if I'm talking about in a case, you are finding out that suddenly patient was fine and suddenly there is pulmonary oligmia, that is sudden breathlessness, and that is also a very high breathlessness, like patient is unable to breathe and he's getting very restless, and that is sudden. Within few minutes we will find out this thing. Then there's pulmonary artery hypertension, then there's right ventricular failure. On right ventricular failure, we can know about jugular vein increased pressure, like there can be a small sign. If you ask the patient to take a deep breath, then what happens is jugular vein pressure should fall. But in right ventricular failure, jugular vein pressure won't fall. Then if patient is in ICU and we go for an echo, we will find out McConnell sign. So these are the things that makes us diagnose about massive pulmonary embolism. But when there's a thrombus and it's a massive thrombus in pulmonary artery, especially in the right descending branch, that case has a really bad prognosis. I mean, if you are in an ICU, maybe doctor will be able to save you, but if you are at home, it's really tough for a person to survive. That's really the mortality is really fast. The time span that we have to manage the case is really less. So this is one thing that is in massive. But usually in COVID, we are not having cases of massive pulmonary emboli. We are having some massive, that is microthrombi. And if we go through the pathology of microthrombi, we will find out that in some massive type, what happens is if you go through the blood pressure, like in massive pulmonary emboli, what happens is there is fall in left ventricular output. There is even left ventricular failure. So in that case, BP fall. While in submassive pulmonary embolism, BP is normal. I mean, we are taking the vitals of a patient, and what we are finding out, everybody just says that we took vitals and oxygen saturation is decreasing, but what is happening is patient is having normal BP, blood pressure is normal. And this is actually a case of submassive pulmonary emboli, because they are thrombus, and thrombus are very small thrombus all over the lung cavity around the alveoli. So around the alveoli, which are actually decreasing the exchange of oxygen. There's decrease in exchange of oxygen because of these microthrombi. So it comes under a category of submassive pulmonary emboli. Now blood pressure is normal, but here also we will find out right ventricular dilatation. Sinus tachycardia will be present. Like if we go through the pulse rate of a patient, we will find out that the pulse rate is increased. BP is normal, but there is increase of pulse rate, and it's like patient is on 7th 8th day, he's saying that I am normal, but oxygen saturation, if we go for 6-minute walk test, there's decrease in oxygen saturation, and there's BP normal, but there's sinus tachycardia. I mean, without fever, there's no cytokine. In case there's no cytokine storm, even there's no fever, even there's no inflammation, even, and because there's no fever, there should not be increase in heart rate. But in these patients, what we will find out that there is increase in heart rate. If we go for a chest x-ray, this chest x-ray of a person will be normal, while in massive, if there's a massive clot in pulmonary artery, we will find out a Hampton's hum. That is a Hampton sign we find in massive pulmonary embolism. But here in these cases, x-ray won't give any sign. Only what will be present is ground glass opacities, and periphery we will find out white shadows. Now what happened is, because of right ventricle dilatation, I mean, few people will come and they will have their troponin I increased, right? Their troponin will be increased, elevated troponin level. Now this is not due to what I would say ischemia of the heart. This is not ischemia occurring because of any thrombus in the heart. This is also a very confusing state. If we go through the troponin of the patient and we get it checked, we get confused too much. What is happening is right coronary arteries compressed due to sudden dilatation of the right ventricle. I mean, when there's microthrombi throughout the lung cavity, blood from heart is trying to pump blood from right ventricle to the lung, but lungs are not able to accept that blood due to the microthrombi throughout the vasculature system of the lung. So what happens is pulmonary hypertension occurs. Due to pulmonary hypertension, right ventricle dilates. This dilatation of right ventricles, usually what happens is coronary artery is on the periphery of the heart. So when heart ventricle will dilate, this coronary artery will be compressed, and this compression of coronary artery will make micro infarcts formation in the heart. This micro infarct will cause elevation of troponin. Here primary cause is not coronary ischemia, it is just microthrombi. And in this case, if we correlate this pathology of pulmonary embolism and COVID-19, we find that this pulmonary embolism thing, that is submassive pulmonary embolism, that is microthrombi, are not due to any secondary cause like DVT, deep vein thrombosis, but it is due to COVID. And if we go through further pathology of it, I mean, I have been talking about all this thing of microthrombi in the vasculature. I've been trying to tell the physiology, like how gas exchange take. Now I've been telling you what actually is happening, how we can correlate between some massive pulmonary embolism and COVID. I mean, lung is facing the same thing, na? Lung is facing the same thing. So what is happening? So overall, everywhere what we are finding is there are microthrombus in blood vasculatures, in vessels, blood vessels, in capillaries around the alveoli, that are causing the fall of oxygen saturation, even though patient is on oxygen support, even though he is getting enough of oxygen. Now this is one thing. Plus there is adding of pneumonia, there is adding of fluid inside. Fluids are partially filled alveoli with fluids instead of fully filled air. Now these are the two things that are coming together. I mean, if it would be a medicine of Aspidospoma, people are thinking that this medicine works well in asthma. What I am saying, that if pathology is same as of asthma and COVID, both are same, then why don't we simply use SABA or LABA? Why don't we use that? I mean, salbutamol and formoterol, just we give the patient a salbutamol shot and a formoterol shot, or immunocorticoids steroids, and patient get well. But this is not the case here, because here pathology is of pulmonary submissive pulmonary embolism. This is the only reason why all allopath are thinking of using heparin or low molecular weight heparin or in fraction heparin as an anticoagulant. So we also have one medicine that is anticoagulant, and that has a potential to dissolve a clot or a thrombus in the blood vessels of lung. That is, we have seen that it is clearly written in Boric that we have clearly actually seen that thrombosis in pulmonary artery can be dissolved by Aspidosperma. This is the only reason why in few cases, like in cases where there have been a massive microthrombi, pulmonary microthrombi present in the chest cavity of a person, that is in the lung. In these cases, when we are giving out Aspidosperma, it is actually working. While in other cases where we would say that microthrombi are not that much present, but more pathology, more thing that is decreasing oxygen saturation of a person is because instead of being partially filled with the fluid, alveoli being air replaced by totally by fluid. Now this is it is proceeding towards consolidation. In that case, if you will think that you will give Aspidosperma, that will help out, obviously it won't. We should be aware of where it will help out and where it won't. This is the fact. We are doctors, guys. We should talk about a logical thing. We should not go about like it is given that cardiac asthma or it is a digitalis of a lung. No, we need to understand the pathology. We need to correlate the pathology, and this is the pathology of the medicine, and this is the pathology of a patient. COVID is also correlating pathology to the pulmonary embolism. Some massive category. So we should know how to correlate things. My point is that. And saying that Aspidosperma can't increase your oxygen saturation, it will. But if there is correlation between the pathology of a patient and if there is correlation between the pathology of a medicine, then only. Then people are asking, instead of that, there has been a shortage. Dr. Bakshi sir himself said that Aspidosperma is not not been able to produce this because they has to import the raw material from other countries of Aspidosperma, and throughout because of this juggling of these WhatsApp things and everything, it has been short, and people are taking as a prophylactic. You don't have a COVID. You don't have your COVID would have been better by 5th day. There's no microthrombi present in your lung. Then if you are using Aspidosperma, that won't take your oxygen saturation from 98 to 198. That's totally illogical thing. We need to talk about it, right? This thing, and people are thinking that homeopathy medicines won't cause any harm and we should take it as a prophylactic. No, that's really not at all logical thing. And in fact, people even put videos of it. So guys, this is actually an moment of time that we should work for this thing. We should actually knowledge is power, and we all need to gain knowledge as much as possible. There has been, government is trying. Being a medicos, we should try to update us as much as possible. Every information is present on internet. You can go through different papers. Lancet and different paper, Radiopedia, all of them are giving up plenty of knowledge. Public Interest Bureau of India, like Dr. Guleria, AIMS himself, they are providing, like AIMS Institute, big institute, they are providing plenty of information, and we can go through the pathology. And since last year, I was going through a paper of Lancet, and it was like July 2020. This pathology of microthrombi was available in their paper. I read the whole paper, and when I find out this thing, and when I find out the correlation, because in patient, what was happening, I got a patient of increased troponin. There was increased troponin of a patient, and BP was normal. So this was actually happening. So from here I got into pathology of pulmonary embolism, then some massive pulmonary embolism, then why people been using Aspidospam, and in few cases it's giving good results and few cases it is not. So correlating everything, I find out this thing. Second thing is that I mean, if we go through the staging, like it has been divided into three staging of COVID disease. In first 5 days, what is happening is usually thrombus formation starts on fifth day. So role of Aspidospama comes on fifth day, right? If you give Aspidospama in 3x or 6x, obviously that will palliate. If there's microthrombi, it will dissolve it, right? So giving once or twice 5 or 10 drops is sufficient. I mean, your patient is a mild case or it's moving towards moderate, and we can think about continuing Aspidospama as a palliative treatment to dissolve if formation of a microthrombi occur for usually from 5th day till 12th day, till then when hyperventilation stops. Because of this shortage of the Aspidospama, there's also one more drug that we normally use in cases of stroke or in cases of cerebrovascular accident, and in cases of any thrombi, and that drug is arnica. So I'm saying if you're not able to get Aspidospama, we can continue with lower potencies of arnica montana in 6x or 12x, and that too to palliate. So this is my approach for the cases. I mean, here we when a cytokine storm starts on 7th day, or when there's hyperinflammation starts on 10th day, 10th 11th day, all we have to do, we don't have to give a push to the immune system that usually homeopathic medicines do. I mean, homeopathic already immune system is hyperactive. What we need to do is palliate. What we need to do, it's an acute disease. I mean, patient will get well. All we need to deal with is the sequelae of the COVID. My point is, if we go through this thing, and this is the approach, because tomorrow, I mean, yesterday I was going through Dr. KK Agarwal's approach, and he was saying that if we give aspirin to every patient who been over 30-35 and all those who are diabetic or who are hypertensive, we increase their doses of aspirin, we will be able to save about 70% of cases, of severe cases of COVID. Then we also have a medicine. If they are giving aspirin, then why don't we use arnica and Aspidospama? We can, but as a palliative. Then thing comes about the patient who are having thrombus throughout the cavity. I mean, I'm talking about the patient who are in ICU. I'm talking about the patient who are severe or critical, whose oxygen saturation are below 90, or these are the patient I'm talking about. In these cases, or their D dimer is very much increased, their LDH, ferritin, all CRP, all are increasing day by day, or neutrophil eosinophil lymphocyte ratio, these are increasing. Like, we repeat investigative report in 72 hours to check whether the patient is deteriorating or patient is improving or stable. We go through all these parameters. When we go through all the parameters, we find out that patient is deteriorating and patient is severe or in ICU. If patient is in ICU, he is on multiple drugs. I mean, he been giving multiple of steroid and everything. In this case, if you will think that you will give out a mother tincture or 3x, 6x or 12x of Aspidospama, it will work? No, it won't. My experience says that when patient is in such a pathology and he is already on support, here we need to go with high potencies of Aspidospama. I mean, I'm using 1m at least for the patient of ICU, because it won't work, and at least frequently, until unless I find out that oxygen saturation is increasing of a patient. So this is my approach and this is my thinking, although I'm open for a debate. I mean, anybody who feel like, so I felt like this, I should share this thing, but anybody who feels like there can be a different approach, but this is the approach I've been using. And I just wanted to find out why it's like that Aspidospama is working in few cases and few cases not working. So this is all what I read. Then there's one more thing. If we go through the pathology of it, we all know that people are asking that why it's happening, thrombus is forming. If we go through that pathology, basically COVID virus enters via ACE enzyme, that is in the endothelial cavity. It enters via ACE2. So to enter via ACE2, there are some changes in the endothelium and there are some changes in the ACE2. Due to these changes, endothelial dysfunction occur. Right, there is a process. Whenever there is endothelial injury, any blood vessel injury, there is like platelet reaches there, thrombin reaches there, fibrinogen converts into a fibrin, and normal process of healing occurs. But there is no thrombus formation in every case of endothelial injury. But here, this virus, for its entry into the endothelium, it is making few changes in the endothelium and ACE. This ACE2 I am talking about. These changes in the endothelium are resulting in endothelium dysfunction. This is the only reason why microthrombi are being formed. Then they are toll-like receptor activation, tissue factor pathway. We all know, like it is a complement system, complement mediated vasculitis in lung that is actually happening because virus inhibit factor H, and factor H controls complement system. Now there's uncontrolled complement mediated activation. This is resulting in complement mediated vasculitis in lung. Plus there's tissue factor. So this all add up to formation of clots, and these clot can form anywhere, but major what we are concerned with is lung, because lung is not only having attack of thrombus, I mean microthrombi, but also of ground glass opacities that we find fluid get filled in alveolar spaces.